Hello and welcome. I was going to stream this on my phone, but you have to have at least 50 subscribers, so that got canceled. But anyway, I'm going to go over how I approach when something's not running after sitting for a while. And hopefully, if you're having the same problem, you can figure out what's wrong with your bike too. Okay, well, let's get started. To drag my laptop all over the place. There it is. So first thing I'm going to look at is, does it start? Does it have power? When I turn it on, do I get a neutral light? Yes. The battery in here is good. I have a green light. I'm in neutral, I think. Yeah, it's in neutral. It's got gas in it. Sounds like it's got gas in it. Okay, should have started by now. Is my kill switch off? No, it's in run mode. Key is on. Horn works. Push the start button. Oops, that's the horn. There's a couple things you need to know to make a bike run. Gotta have, I wrote these down because this is class. Compression, spark, and a good fuel and air mixture. So I'm gonna assume I have compression because I tested this last year. And it was good. It was running last year. I'm gonna check if there's spark. Maybe like a mouse got in here and chewed up all my wires or something. So I'm just gonna make sure I actually have spark. Take your spark plug out, plug it into here, and then you have to touch it somewhere to the motor to ground it out. I have other spark plugs. I'm just gonna try one of those first. So I'm just gonna ground it out, make sure that it's touching the motor somewhere. Should be a little spark that jumps from the end of this part to this hook. So, oh boy. It's actually easier to do if you take your spark plugs out because then you don't have compression and you can turn it over. Okay, I saw a spark. All right, so we have spark, which I figured would be fine. I didn't think any mice got in here and ate this thing. What usually happens when your bike sits over the winter is your gaskets all gummed up in here in your carburetors, or your float needle gets stuck and it's not letting the fuel into the carburetor. I'm gonna go down the next step. So if you have spark and you have compression, your next thing to look at is going to be your fuel air mixture. So that all happens here in the carburetor, in this general area. Fuel comes from your tank, goes into here, goes into these bowls. This part of the carburetor right here is a little bowl that's always full of a certain amount of fuel. And if that fuel level's off, or if the valve that controls how much fuel is in the bowl is stuck, you don't have the right amount of fuel in here, you're not going to get the right fuel air mixture to run the bike. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the gas is flowing from the tank to the valve or to this bowl. So here's our fuel switch, and it is in the off position. That would be embarrassing. So let's turn it on. I'm actually going to turn it on reserve because I'm not sure how much gas is in the tank. Oh, so I don't know if you can see this. Yes, fuel is dripping out. That means that the float valve, or the valve that controls how much fuel goes into this bowl, is stuck open. And sometimes you can remedy that with a little tap. You just take a hammer or a wrench or something and just kind of see if it'll loosen up and unstick itself. We're not going to get that lucky today. So I'm going to turn the gas off so it stops leaking all over the floor. We're going to take these carburetors off. So to get to your carburetors, it's easier if you take the tank off and the seat off. And if I remember correctly how to do that, oh, well, this is supposed to be attached usually, but it's not. So my seat should be real easy to take off. There you go. So usually this will swing up like this on that hinge, but it's broken on the other side. So it just comes off, which is actually nice. I like that. Next, we want to take the tank off. Sometimes on these older bikes, they have a tube that goes from this side of the tank underneath the frame to the other side of the tank. They're a pain in the ass because if you have gas in your tank, you have to disconnect those tubes. You have to figure out how to get the gas out or just be okay with it spraying everywhere. But on this one, I don't have that. So all I have to do is make sure that the fuel valve here is turned off. I'll disconnect these fuel lines. Just yank them off, probably. Oh, yours might have like little clamps on them, but mine doesn't. Now the tank is disconnected from all the fuel lines, and I don't think I have the bolt. There's usually a bolt right here, keeping the tank on. I don't have one, so I'll just pull up, pull back. There we go. Tank is off. Now you have better access to carburetors here. Got to take the air filters out, pull this away from the bike like that, and then lift up. Some bikes are different. I got one on this side. I'm gonna do the same thing. These are the covers for your air filters. You have one on either side. They're connected by a bolt that goes all the way through. So I'm just holding the bolt on the other side with a wrench. Pull it out. There you go. I got the nut in here. This bolt. Bam. Set that aside. This cover comes off. Hopefully. There we go. Well, just one 10mm bolt here. Same thing on the other side. Finished taking the air filters off. We have these hose clamps here. So you're just gonna take a Phillips head screwdriver and loosen those. Remove these. Loosen that up. You don't have to take it all the way off. Just get it so it's loose. And then you should just be able to slide these air filters out. Whoop. There you go. The air filter's off. Oh shit. Got a bunch of gas all over my computer. Hang on. It's not good for it. Wish I could stream on my mobile device, but I don't have enough subscribers for that. Hopefully I just didn't ruin my computer. All right, anyway, as I was saying, now we just have to disconnect the carburetors from whatever they're attached to on the motor. Usually that's a throttle cable and a choke cable on these older bikes. Actually, we don't have a choke cable. We just have a choke right here. So we just have two throttle cables. And actually, we don't have to disconnect those right now. It would probably be easier just to loosen these hose clamps that are holding the carburetor to the intake on the motor, and then pop the carburetors out of those so we can turn them a little bit, and then we'll be able to get to the throttle cable a little bit easier. When I say loosen the hose clamps, they're already pretty loose. It's not supposed to be the case. Yeah, that's loose. I didn't even tighten that. It's a genius move on my end. The hose clamps are loose. We should be able to just pop this carburetor out of here. Just give it a tug. I'll give you a better look, but not too close. I don't want to fill up my computer with gasoline. Oh! I did not get more gas on the computer, but these fuel lines are full. They have gas in them, and it is spraying on everything. That's all right. We got the carburetors out of the intake boots. Okay, I don't know if you can see this because I'm streaming on my laptop because I don't have enough subscribers to do mobile device. But these two cables right here, they just have little 10mm nuts on them. Loosen the 10mm nuts. You can slide them out of their brackets. And I think this one here, it's threaded into its bracket. So you just unscrew the whole cable. And this one you undo the nuts. You'll see. It'll be pretty self-explanatory. Unscrewing the cable now. There you go. So the cables are loose from the brackets, but they're still attached on the actual throttle. So let me get these carbs out and I'll show you how this attaches so you can see what you're doing. Sometimes it can be kind of tricky figuring out which way the carburetors are supposed to come out. We'll wobble them until there's something that makes sense. There we go. Not always this easy. Don't get sad if you're having a hard time. All right. See these little, I don't know what these are called on the end of the cable, but just pull the cable and there'll be a slot for the actual like wire part to come through. You just pull them out to the side. Bam. Same thing for the other cable. Whoop. See this wire coming out? Just push it out the slot. Sorry for my 2012 megapixels here. This is streaming on my computer. All right. Carburetors are free. Now we can take a look at what's going on inside. Let's go to the bench. These carbs have, oh, oh, I am so dumb. Live. Man, I wish I had enough subscribers so somebody could actually see this live, but when I put this bike away before the winter, I unscrewed the drains for the carbs. So this is a drain screw. You open it up, all the fuel in the float bowl comes out. That way, over the winter time, your fuel doesn't get all gummed up in there. And I did that to avoid this whole process that I'm doing right now, but I forgot that I did that. So these drain screws are they're just chilling. They're not tight. They are definitely backed out. So that's why the fuel was coming out of the bowls, because the drain screw was open. I probably didn't have to do all this. I probably could have just closed the drain screw and the bowls would have filled up to the appropriate level like they did last year before I put it in the shed. And then I could have kicked it over and it would have started. And that also explains why I'm holding these upside down right now and there's no fuel just going everywhere. Usually these bowls have fuel in them still, unless you drain them. So that's embarrassing, but that's why we do it live. This is real life, people. I'm going to go ahead and tighten these bad boys. Going to grab a screwdriver. I'll be right back. All right. Tighten the drain screws. Pop these open so I can show you what I was talking about. Float levels, float needles. So what I just did is there's 4 screws on the bottom of each bowl. 1, 2, 3, 4. I undid these 4. So I'm just pull this last screw out. These bowls have a gasket on them, which is like a little, this one's kind of like an O-ring. It's this black part that goes around the outside of the bowl here. Mine's flat as hell because it's old, but it's still sealing, so I'm just going to leave it there. If you have fuel leaking out somewhere that's not your drain or some like random part, like where this surface meets the surface of the carburetor, you might want to replace this. You can get them when you buy the carb kits for them online. So what I'm talking about, this is the float. It works like a toilet. As the fuel goes in the bowl, this thing's like actually a floaty, so it lifts up and closes the valve when the fuel gets to the right height. And the valve for that is underneath that. So to take this out, there's a pin right here. Pull this pin out. This float pops out. It's going to bring the needle valve out with it. It was another thing you're going to want to look for if your bike's not starting this year. These little screws are really precise sized holes called jets. If you're doing your research, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about already, but take these jets out, blow compressed air through them, blow carburetor cleaner through them. Don't take my word for it. Look up how to clean carburetors on YouTube. There's way more in-depth videos, but I'm just kind of giving you somewhere to start. So anyway, I'm pretty sure this carburetor is clean. If it wasn't clean, that would be a good reason why it wouldn't start. And by clean, I mean the fuel sometimes when it gets old, it gets all gummy and like, I can't remember the word for it, but it turns into like a sludge and it clogs up these really precise holes. And it might cause the float needle to stick so that the fuel is just constantly flowing and it's overflowing, which I thought was what was happening, but it wasn't. It was just that my drain screws were wide open. So you would come in here, take these things apart, spray them down with carb cleaner, blow them out with compressed air. Usually 90% of the time, that's going to solve your problem. I'm going to put this back on and I'm just going to bench test these carburetors to make sure that they don't leak before I go and spend all this time putting it back on. So I'll show you how I do that once I put these 4 screws back in. Okay, bench test. Come with me to the vise. Okay, here we are. So I'm just going to stick these in my vise, very lightly clamp these down level, relatively level. Okay. I have my juice bottle gas tank here. Got the Simply Orange fuel tank. Hook the hose up where the inlet goes on the carburetor. I'm going to pull this hose off, plug it in, boop, good to go. Turn the gas on. There should be fuel flowing into the bowl. I'm just watching to see if it weeps from any of these seams on the bowl, or if it's leaking, like if the float needle gets stuck open, it'll just keep letting fuel in until it is weeping a little bit. It's kind of wet right here. It's probably because my gaskets are flat as hell. I think this like little gasket in here might expand a little bit because it's pretty dried out. So as it gets wet with fuel, I'm hoping that it'll just expand and kind of close the gaps. We'll see. I don't care enough to buy a new O-ring or a new gasket, so I'm just going to leave it. But clearly, there's fuel going into this, and it's not overflowing, which means the float needle valve is closing. Let's check the other side. All right, try the other side. I'm going to pop this line off here. Fuel line in here. Turn the gas on. Whoop. There we go. So far, so good. Ooh, overflow. Okay. It's not supposed to do that. Oh, yeah. See, it's coming out of all the holes. Just coming out everywhere. So that means the float needle is stuck open. This is why we test on the bench, because this would be really annoying if this happened after we put it back in the bike. One thing I'm going to try to do is just give it a tap. No. All right. I'm going to take a look at that float needle, see if I can figure out why it's stuck. It might just need to be cleaned off. Open up the drain on both of them. A little bit at a time. Just waiting for the gas to drain. Come on. Get in there. Good Lord, hurry up. Oh, that did it. Okay. Unscrew these 4 screws to take the bowl off. There we go. So I'm going to take this float needle out and just take a look at it, see why it might have been leaking. I'll clean out the needle seat, which is the little hole the needle goes in. I'm going to check and see if these floats have, I'm just listening for any liquid inside the float because that would mess it up, but it sounds like it's dry. This is the float needle. This little rubber bit on the end here is the part of the valve that actually does the sealing, shuts the fuel off. So we want to look at that. Make sure there's nothing wrong with that. No grooves in it, no cracking. Mine looks pretty good. I'm just gonna wipe off the this part, clean it up, because if there's any like dirt or dried up grime or crust on this part, the needle won't slide in and out. Just because the needle gets stuck doesn't necessarily mean you have to replace it. You just have to give it some attention. So the seat's looking a little crusty. I'll show you guys the hole I'm looking at here. This hole right here is where the needle goes in. Boop. And that little rubber cone seals against the bottom of this hole. And if there's crust in there, it won't be a good seal. So I'm going to pop this seat out. So undo this little screw, this bracket off. Sometimes you can just pull these out if you're lucky. It's kind of, here we go. This is your needle seat. It's not the cleanest. Wow, that does look bad. How did that get so bad? You're not going to be able to see in there, but so I'm going to have to get creative and figure out how to clean this up. I'm just going to spray some carb cleaner through this hole. Blast it with this compressed air. Hold on tight. Don't let it go flying. Typically, I would just order a new valve seat. I don't have time to do that. What I usually do in a situation like this is steel wool. A little bit of steel wool down there. More aggressive than paper towel, but it's not aggressive enough that I'm gonna like gouge anything. I just need to find it if I have it. Let me see what else I have in my Dremel case. This wire brush for the Dremel. I don't know if this is gonna work. It's gonna thread all these wires in there. Come on. All right. The reality is that this just, I need a new seat. And typically these seats come with carb rebuild kits, so that would solve a lot of my problems. So anyway, I'm just gonna try to put this back in. We'll see what we get. This little bracket back on there. Need the needle. There's just Google winterizing your motorcycle. You'll find all kinds of solutions. Well, let's see if that seals. We can test it right now. Go stick it in the vise. Turn the gas on. Okay. It seems like the float needle is sealing well enough. I'm putting very small amount of pressure on this. Now when the fuel runs out of the bowl, the float comes down, lets more in, float goes up. Very small amount of pressure on there right now. So we might actually have a good seal. Next step is to put the bowl back on. Yeah. If you're not in a hurry, it would make a lot of sense for you to just order a carb rebuild kit. Make sure, because they usually come with new needles too, so your seat and your needle are going to be fresh. You're not going to have to worry about issues with them sealing. Okay, we're going to need to put the drain plug back in here. Almost forgot that again. So far, everything's looking good. Just gotta wait at least a minute or so. All right, that one's not overflowing. Time to put the carburetors back on the bike. I'm gonna put the throttle cables back on. The cable in the thingy, wrap it around, pull it on the stuff, thread it in the stuff. Make sure it's not so tight that it's pulling your throttle open. Okie dokie, got the cables in. Ease these in here. Almost there. Okay. Slide them into the intake boots. Sometimes it helps if you put a little bit of lube on there. I'm gonna grab some chain and cable lube. Just gonna do a little squirt on the rubber boots and a little bit on the carburetor just to help things slide along here. Line these up. There we go. Give them a shove. That was easy. Screwdriver. Tighten these intake clamps right here. All right, got the carburetors on. I'm gonna hook the fuel lines back up, put the gas tank on, try to start it, see what happens. This fuel in here is from last year in the fall. So there's potential that it could be bad gas after all this. Could have bad gas in the tank, but I don't think so. I think it'll still run on this. But if it doesn't run, I'll try that. Hook these back up. Turn the gas on. So we have compression, we have spark. Now we should have fuel because we didn't before, because I left the drain screws open. So should run. Let's give it a shot. Probably gonna work. Seems to want a good amount of choke to keep it going, which if I put the air filters back on, that might be all the resistance I need to get the fuel flowing correctly. So works better than it did an hour ago. It needs some tuning. I'm going to put the air filters back on. I'm going to adjust the pilot screw a little bit. I shouldn't have to that much because it was in a good spot last year. But overall, also, it'll probably run better when it warms up a little bit. If your bike doesn't run when you get it out of the garage in the winter, check to see if you winterized it by just opening the drain screws and you forgot to close them, which is what happened to me. And then do all the other stuff I was looking at. There's tons of YouTube videos explaining how to do carburetors, how to adjust valves. You can look at that, how to adjust your timing. But if it ran when you put it away, and it doesn't run in the spring, it's probably a carburation issue. They're not that hard to get out, dig into, clean them up, put them back on. It took me, we're at an hour and a half. So hopefully this demystified this for some of you. For anyone who's watching in the future who has no idea how their bikes work, a lot of you guys buy these old Hondas for a couple $100 because you're just getting into bikes. So this might be just for you. So thanks for watching. For anyone in the future, have a good time. Hopefully you can ride this spring instead of watching all your friends go up and down the street without you. I'm going to end this, put the air filters back on, take it for a test ride. If something weird happens, I'll put it in the comments later, but thanks for watching. See you later.